So, capital punishment. Capital punishment has been used for thousands of years as a means of dealing with violent criminals. Recently, people have wanted to abolish capital punishment, like in the 60s, and have been wanting to replace it with life without parole, which is life in prison. My major claim is that capital punishment is the most efficient way to deal with people who are a threat to society. And just to be clear, capital punishment is not murder. Capital punishment is the legal implementation of the death penalty. Murder is the unlawful, premeditated killing of another human being, according to Webster's dictionary. First, capital punishment keeps criminals from endangering any more people, obviously because they're dead. Example when capital punishment was not used and it was bad is in 2003, there was 3,374 prisoners under sentence of death, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. 272 were previously convicted of homicide. That may not seem like much, but it's still 272 innocent people that could have been saved if the people were just executed the first time. Capital punishment also prevents people from wanting to commit crimes. This is seen also in 1972, after the case of Furman versus Georgia, the Supreme Court declared most federal and state death penalty laws as unconstitutional. So states had to rewrite a lot of their death penalty laws, which led to less death sentences, and also more than 600 prisoners had their death sentences lifted. In the years following this decision, the homicide rate increased and eventually reached the highest point recorded in the 20th century in 1980. Third, it is true that there is a risk of sentencing innocent people to death, and we must realize that the current system of trial by jury is the best that we've come up with so far, and until we have something better, we have to trust it. Even with the flawed system, 131 people have been saved through many appeals, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Also, even if the life in prison is used instead of the death penalty, everyone is mortal, so everyone will die, so it basically is taking their life away anyways. Fourth, death penalty is cheaper than life in prison because obviously you don't have to keep them around, you can kill them. It only is more expensive if you also count in the gathering of evidence and researching for new ways of humane executions. And that is pretty much all. Capital punishment is the most efficient way to deal with people who are a threat to society.
All right. The strongest parts of the argument are the statement of your proposition. It's very clear what your position is, and the signposting on the secondary points once you get to the body of the argument. There is no preview of those points in the opening of the speech, and so the roadmap is not helping us very much in figuring out where we're going on this argument. A couple of the supporting points that you have, I think, are a little problematic. For instance, the third point is really a defensive argument. It's not about whether or not it's efficient. It's a kind of argument responding to a challenge to its efficiency, which I think probably would work in a policy context, but for this claim of fact, if you're going to focus on whether or not the death penalty solves crime or prevents crime or any of those, or if it's efficient in some other way, I think that it doesn't quite work into the argument that you've got there. Your supporting information is a little thin. You've got a couple of hypothetical examples. There's a little bit of statistical information about the people on death row and prior convictions that they have. There's no authority information that shows that the death penalty is effective at deterring crime. It's all largely an assumption. There is one reference to some factual data about the homicide rate being the highest it ever was in 1980 after the abolition of the death penalty in the 1972 case. Of course, the one question is, since the death penalty was restored by many states in 76, 77, and 78, the question is, why was the homicide rate so high in 1980? You're making a big inference here, and if there's some authority who's analyzed this data and came up with this conclusion, you ought to be citing that person instead of making the inference on your own, because there's going to be potentially holes in the way that you're reasoning there. I didn't really get very clear source citations except for the Justice Department information on the homicide statistics of people who are repeat offenders on death row now. You've got a value argument on that third point, and on the fourth point on cost issues, it's all assumed. Hey, we kill them, so there's no cost. And I think that there are some pretty important arguments on that point that you're going to be hearing about in a couple of weeks from the respondent. I think there is an argument for your position to be made on this, but you haven't really presented any evidence on that point. I did think, though, at the end of the speech that you had a pretty clear exit line and we knew what your position was once again, which is a good way to finish off. All right, thank you.